Prepare to experience the strongest radio allowable by law. Secrets will be revealed. Myths dispelled. From the studio gym where excuses never apply, it's Superhuman Radio with your host, Carl Lenore.
Welcome back to a Facebook Live version of the Superhuman Radio Show. Today is Thursday. I'll be joined by my co-host Adam Lamb in just a moment for the Renew Life RX show. Before we do that, I have to make an announcement. The end of the month is near, and the $14.99 per pound of Thrive protein is going to end at the end of the month. I have people buying 10 jugs at a time. Peter Licatos just ordered 10 jugs to be delivered to Hungary. No, it wasn't Peter Licatos. I'm sorry. It was Lars Thornholm. And so, you know, this is the best protein powder in the world. I say that with complete conviction and honesty. There isn't another protein product on the market today that has what Thrive, THRIV, has in it. The website is thrivprotein.com. Check out the list of ingredients. $14.99 a pound is exactly $2.70 more than I pay All-American Pharmaceutical to make that 1 pound jug for me. Why am I doing this? Because I want people to try it. Because when people try it, they keep buying it. And we will have specials for those who want to reorder Thrive. The coupon code is THRIV 2019. Go to Thrive Protein, thrivprotein.com. Check it out. And get yourself some today.
The first step to changing your life starts with the Renew Life Show with Adam Lamb.
Let me bring Adam in here. Turn the solo off, and we'll get the image out of there. I am producing video. I'm producing podcasts. I'm doing it all. I'm hosting. Come on, man.
You're doing a great job.
How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. And the audience gets to see you. You're a handsome guy. I told you once during a show that you have kind of a movie star quality handsome, so now people know I'm not lying.
There
you go.
Thank you.
So,
yeah, it's good to be here.
I want to preface today's show for a second. So originally we were going to do a show on PCT, post-cycle therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of people out there who are not on cycles, but they should pay attention to this show too, because if your goal is to raise endogenous testosterone levels. Let's say you're somebody who's going, look, I don't know if I want to be on testosterone yet. I'd like to give the boys one last chance to redeem themselves. I know my last blood work shows that my testosterone levels are less than optimal. This show will give you insight into the protocol required to kind of restart, reboot your testicles to producing more testosterone, right?
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
And we use a protocol similar to this for, you know, when I'll say younger guys, the early 30s, and maybe their things aren't where they want to be, and before choosing the path of testosterone replacement therapy, we try to do something along the lines of this as far as stimulating the body to produce it naturally or at a higher rate, because there's different things that we can do. We talked about environmental issues, things like that can cause lower testosterone, lower LH and FSH function. And sometimes too, there's kicking up the SHBG level a little bit if that's low to help out with testosterone absorption.
Interestingly enough, there is a new consensus on SHBG that's emerging, and I'm sure you've been watching it too. It was once thought that SHBG was bad, that it bound testosterone and deactivated it. But now we're starting to learn that SHBG may actually help carry testosterone into tissue where then it does its work.
That's what we've been doing for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, our major focus, this is like what's really, I think, separated our clinic is that we've realized that SHBG is the most important hormone to look at on the panel outside of testosterone, which is the obvious one. And the reason being is it tells a story about what your body's doing with the sex hormones, whether it's DHEA, estrogen, and testosterone, obviously. And if your SHBG is, because one of the things we would see is these guys that are going, and this is also ties in great for the the post-cycle therapy, or we call it a reset, meaning coming off, giving the body a break, and doing some things to do that with it, testosterone. But what we've seen a lot is guys will come to us, they've been with a clinic, they're getting their shot every week or every 2 weeks, or every 3 weeks even, which is crazy. And they come to us, they don't feel like it's working anymore. Their libido's down. They don't have that like when they first got on it, And a lot of times they think, just like any drug, there's a dependency, and maybe you need more, right? So then they're up to 300, and then they're the 400, and then they're the 500, and most people are not going to write a prescription for that. So then they're veering off and they're adding compounds to their TRT, trying to get that feeling back. And what happens is we see these guys come over to us, their testosterone's 14, 1500, but their SHBG's at 7 or 9. Now, the analogy that we use in that aspect, and any of our clients listening know because they've heard me use this, is that SHBG is like this river, right? And if the river's dry, nothing's flowing. You can throw all I call it testosterone canoes in that river, and it's not going to flow, right? And then the same thing goes, though, from what we've seen, is when your SHBG is high, there's a relative ratio to testosterone as far as absorption. It's kind of like if you said, hey, Adam, I want a shot of vodka, and we pour that shot in a 30-ounce bottle of water, right? It's diluted. It's going to take more to make that effect.
Right.
And one of the things too, and you actually triggered this on a call, is we don't know what our hormones were at 20, right? So you might be at 1800. No one checks it, right? I mean, I would be impressed to find anyone that had their hormones looked at, except for maybe like an Olympic athlete that's being tested, right? Other than that, no one looks at hormones in their early 20s, late teens to see where their kind of like their baseline is, right? And I think of like a LeBron James, who's just 18 years old beast, just muscle bound, athletic. Like he might have been at 1800 testosterone, right? Like that might be his happy place, so to speak. And so like in his 40s, he might be at 7, which to us on a lab work scale might seem that's good, right? 700 in your 40s, that's pretty good. But it's relative, because if his body's used to being at a higher level of testosterone to accomplish the things that he's accomplishing from an athlete and things like that, he's going to still have those feelings of low testosterone, if that makes sense. And that's just some stuff that we've been working on with SHBG and clients that come to us, whether they have high SHBG, they typically need higher testosterone. If they have low SHBG, we need to get that up so the body can move the testosterone around. And we have a ton of success with it.
So let me ask you an interesting question that just dawned on me. So there are physicians out there who use saliva testing only, right? And they I don't believe saliva testing is better at all. In fact, I think saliva testing is good.
We don't.
Yeah.
We feel comfortable. Just like, there's certain things in TRT that we don't feel comfortable doing, so we don't do it or don't recommend it.
Right. And I'll tell you a story in a minute, but here's my question to you. So there's a lot of physicians out there that will get a free test reading saliva and an SHBG, but because you can't do total tests through saliva, you can only do free test and SHBG. And then there's this formula that they theoretically calculate and back into your total testosterone levels. But the reality is that has to be flawed. Now, what we know about the relationship between SHBG, free testosterone, and total testosterone.
Yeah, I think free testosterone is one of the least important things to check, and it's the number one thing that people that don't really know a lot about it ask about. They're like, well, where should my free test be? And my free test was this, my free test was that. And I'm like, well, it doesn't. All that tells you is that you just have testosterone floating around in your body that's not bound, right? So it's like, like there's milk spilled on the floor. It's obvious, right? So we got to figure out how the milk get there and how do we clean the milk up, right? And that's where those tests. There's other tests that do that. We don't even look at free test because we can typically tell, and we will if we need to. It's another layer of testing that usually isn't required because we understand the SHBG process as much. And so doing things like understanding if your SHBG is really low but your total test is high, well, your free test is going to be low too because there's nothing. It's not being bound. But if your SHBG is low, every single time your free test is going to be high, even if your testosterone is low, because it's not being bound. And like I said, we started doing this really consistently 2 years ago, which led us to why I think, our philosophy and process behind TRT is so good, because we checked it and looked at it and we realized like there's no reason to even look at this free test, except for, there's always that one-off person like that could have an issue, the absorption issue, things like that maybe we have to dig it deeper and try to solve. But really rarely does that exist. And the total test and the SHBG are, the two things to look at to really figure out what's going on.
So I actually challenged, it wasn't on purpose. Many years ago, when I was trying to determine whether it was too late for me to bring my own testosterone levels back to normal because of performance enhancing drug use for several years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I lived for a year trying to raise my testosterone levels, and I was able to raise them, but they still weren't where I wanted them to be, where I felt that I would be physiologically protected by my sex hormones.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was using saliva testing. And so one day I did saliva test with SHBG and free testosterone through ZRT Lab. And I also happened to have blood drawn at Quest Diagnostics. And when the results came back from ZRT, it said that my free test was ridiculously high. Like it was something crazy, like 700 and something, right? And then the formulary showed that my total test was like 2,000 and something based on the SHBG. But Quest Diagnostics showed my total test was 412 and my free test was like 6. And
it's
so
a false reading with the free test.
What's that?
There's like a false reading that believes if there's this much free test, there must be this much total test.
Well, and it's got to be, yeah, sure, because the SHBG, yeah. And so I asked Dr. Zava. I said, I emailed him. This is when he was still friendly with the show. He had been on my show a couple times. Everything was cool. And I said, look, your saliva test shows this, and the true blood work shows this. And he just never responded. He just he didn't want to be bothered with that.
I love to use analogies, and that's one of the things we talk about with our clinic is making medicine personal, making this conversation very easy to understand. And so a lot of the clients that work with us, they understand that we do it that way for that purpose. But an analogy I would give you is it's like driving by a nightclub and seeing a line around the block and assuming that the nightclub is packed, right? Because I used to work in the nightclub industry, and we would have a line around the block with nobody in the bar just to build that hype, right? To give that appearance of it's spot.
Right.
So that's a lot of what's going on when you look at free test is there's a lot of people outside the building, but we don't know if the club's bumping, right? And based on if the person doesn't feel good and they have low libido and low energy, low confidence, those kind of things, well, we know the club's empty, right? Even though you can hear the music and the people are outside. So that's how we've kind of always looked at free test is it's like an obvious thing, right? Okay, so but why, right? Why is the free test? And it's usually SHBG almost every single time.
So let's get into this for a second. Post-cycle therapy is employed by individuals who use androgens in a cyclical approach where they're 16 weeks on and then they take off. It's also used by men who, for whatever reason, have decided, I don't want to stay on testosterone. I want to see if I can get my endogenous testosterone levels back to some normalcy, but inappropriately named post-cycle therapy. These same protocols could be used for somebody who is at the vector where they're going, wow, my testosterone levels are low. I don't want to go on testosterone. I would like to try to see if I can fix whatever it is. These same protocols could be used. So let's talk about the protocols. Like, what are the standard approaches to regain the highest possible level of endogenous testosterone again?
Yeah, and that's great. I think a great intro. And the term post-cycle therapy, we never use because really I put that in the bucket of steroid abuse. There really isn't a post-cycle therapy. There just may be different seasons, so to speak, in your therapy to do it responsibly, right? And so, with I'll talk about where they come into, and then we'll talk about some of the compounds. So a lot of times, like we said earlier, some guys that aren't quite ready, they want to see if they can stimulate their natural testosterone production to kind of crank up the heat a little bit. And we'll we'll go through a process that way. And there's a lot of trial and error and checking and rechecking blood work and things like that to see what works well for those individuals, because it doesn't always work well for everybody. The same dosing. So, like there's no cookie cutter in hormone replacement therapy. And the other thing is, with especially our guys on injections, which is probably 20% of our guys that do injections. We really like the cream. We'll have them 20 weeks on, 5 months, basically 5 months on, 1 month off, 5 months on, 1 month off is a good longevity view at it. And we have some guys that, like they actually like it. There's a refresh in everything from, it just lets the body calm down, whether it's cholesterol, liver, hemoglobin, hematocrit. Not that our clients ever get high in that area, but it allows to give you that break. And there's just, I think there's something to be said about taking a little break here and there with anything you do, whether it's high protein diets or high intensity training or whatever it might be. There's taking a break from stuff is always good, in my opinion, in our opinion. And then most of our clients that do cream, they'll do, we call it the reset or reboot once a year. And sometimes we don't have them do it at all. They don't have to do it, especially, depending, like someone your age, for example, was less likely, we're less concerned about taking those breaks as long as your blood work's good than we are with the guy who's 35, right? Who still might be looking for, planning a family and those kind of things. And the body responds better in the 30s than it does in the 60s. I had a guy yesterday who's basically he's come on board, his LH and FSH levels are shut down. And I said, listen, the doctor's kind of feedback was he's 60. Is there a reason to really focus on the LH and FSH production? This guy's been on TRT for 20 years, right? Before he came over to us anyway. And he was on pretty decent TRT. And so he was like, I'm not really overly focused on it, right? So we're not worried about continuing trying to crank those LH and FSH levels up that might not even move anyway. They might be shut down, right? And so going into some of those protocols look like is typically HCG, clomiphene, and anti-estrogen. And some of that varies from an anti-estrogen standpoint based on sensitivity, and blood work obviously dictates it, right? If someone has a low SHBG, really low shutdown LH-FSH, we might have a higher dose of HCG than we would on somebody who has a good SHBG or a high SHBG with a consistent HCG. And I think, so for me, for example, I just did a 30-day, my 30 days was over on Tuesday. And I did 500 IUs of HCG daily, which I believe is a little too much. And then we did Clomid every night, and every morning. And then I rotated an estradiol 0.5 milligram every other day, and the tamoxifen 10 milligram every other day. And the tamoxifen was a new thing for this that we're kind of trying to see what it did with my blood work. And actually some of that blood work is back, and we can talk about it. Got my LH and FSH levels were pretty close to shut down, and they're at 0.8 and 1.9. And they've been bad basically since the dawn of time, almost, from my bodybuilding years, right? And there's some recovery. So I mean, the function's there, but what we've also seen is for someone like me who's been on TRT for over 10 years, and I'm going to be 40 next year, right? I'm not 30. And so the body's, it just doesn't want to it's not important for it to have those LH and FSH.
Yeah, and you're right, and it doesn't respond the same. I got to give a shout out to John Peaks, who is in the sauna at the gym in Tulsa, Arizona, sweating it out. And he just said that he just talked to you, Adam, on Friday, and he's going to get on HRT.
Awesome.
With your group. And so, and I know John a long time. John is an over-the-road trucker, which has a very unpredictable lifestyle for him. And so, frankly, getting his sleep straight has been difficult for him. And I think the smartest thing he can do as a protective mechanism is to get on HRT. There are some people whose lifestyles almost dictate hormonal interventions. or as Dr. Mark Gordon likes to call it, interventional endocrinology, because their lifestyles are actually interrupting a lot of the normal cascades of these hormones. I also want to give a shout out to Joe Ferry, who's listening to the show live, and also a longtime friend through Suprema Radio. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to pick it back up. And at the end of this, we will literally lay out A, B, C, D, E, F, G. This is what you do if you are interested in trying to reboot, so to speak. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more of the Renew Life RX show. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Renew Life RX show with Adam Lamb and myself, Carl Lenore. Adam, do you know that Superhuman Radio has earned the distinction, you ready for this, of being the longest running health, fitness, and longevity podcast in the world?
Well, that's pretty awesome.
I mean, really, think about that for a second.
How long have you been doing it?
I'm in my 14th year. My 14th year. And we have talked about things on this show years and years before other people have talked about them on their shows, podcasts, and the mainstream media. And you know, the other thing is, all credit to Jimmy Moore, because Jimmy and I actually started our podcast within months of each other. But Jimmy was dedicated to the low carb lifestyle and now the keto lifestyle. And he's done amazing things in that area. And he's worked very, very hard. The only difference between Jimmy and I is that I tended to have a broader palette of interests to pull from. And you know, quite frankly, it may have punished me, because Jimmy, you know, by being more selective and more narrowly focused on a given topic, he's attracted a larger number of people who probably listen to his show than mine, because on Monday I may do a show that interests this group, and on Tuesday I may do a show that interests this group, and this group doesn't listen to that show, and this group doesn't listen to that show. But I mean, it's amazing. I actually have been asked to do an interview because after doing some research, I am the longest running health, fitness, and longevity podcast in the world.
Awesome.
And look at me. I have a huge staff of people working with me, producing the shows. Oh no, it's just me. I forgot. I thought it was somebody else. I'm sorry.
That's funny.
Anyway,
good guests on here though.
What's that?
You get some good guests, right?
Oh yeah, the best. I mean, really, somebody. I did a show not too long ago with Elena Gross on migraines and the ketogenic diet. And after the show, she said to me, "You should be the one that's getting the PhD." And I said, you know, I've had the great fortune of being able to interview the most interesting, most talented, and most brilliant people in any of these categories every day for going on 14 years. It's like I'm like the kid who just never graduates university. I just keep taking more classes.
No, I can relate to that totally, because even, you know, I had someone that was like, why don't you go to medical school and just be the doctor so you don't have to hire them? And to be honest with you, I like being with the person, the human, right? Like that human relation, that human touch. And I think that sometimes, and even our physicians agree, that there's a part of the process that they go through that there's almost a coldness, a distance. And not all doctors, but most doctors, you know, that I think lose that human touch as much, where I think like yourself too, like just being able to relate, like you're a regular guy, right? I'm a regular guy. Here's the things that are important to me. Those are also things that are important to you. And now we can have a conversation and learn from each other that way. And I think that that's one of the big things too, that our clients like.
Ron Penna once said to me, because I talked about once on the air, I said, should I go and get like a, naturopathic doctor's degree, because then I'd be taken more seriously. By the way, Jeff Higginbottom, thanks so much for the congratulations. And he said, don't make the mistake of making your avocation your vocation. Mm-hmm. You know, taking something that you love to do and then turning it into work and a job. And that changed my mind. I decided, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm doing it, and you know, I seem to be doing it okay, and I'm not going to change it. But anyway, getting back to the important discussion about restoring hormones. So lay out the whole protocol. Let's say I'm your client. I come to you and I say, hey, I want to try and restore my best possible levels of testosterone. What do you do for how long and so on? How do you do it?
Well, so initial blood work's always going to dictate, but we'll go into like a general example because, you know, that's one thing that's very important too is you should know what you're doing for somebody before you look at the blood work. If you already know what you're going to do for them, you're not doing a good job. And so
that's a really great point. Wait, I don't want to go further than that for a second. I mean, that's an interesting point. Say that again.
I said that if you know what you're going to do for someone before you look at their blood work, you are not doing the right thing. Right?
And that's the whole cookie cutter. Everybody gets 250 milligrams of test. Everybody gets half a milligram of anastrozole every 2 days. Like that is exactly what's wrong with HRT.
For sure, without a doubt. And that's even where folks are like, well, I had my blood work done 2 months ago. We don't care.
And there's a lot of clinics out there that will listen to this and go, well, we don't do that. We always get blood work first. But then when you go, show me the listing of your clients, and all of a sudden you see it's all the same. Everybody got the same thing.
It's all. And in some cases, when you know a certain thing works, it's good to start there. But you also have to see, you know, like we have guys that don't do anything as far as AI. We have guys that have to do one almost every other day, right? And everybody's body's different. If anyone out there believes that everyone's body is not different, you're majorly wrong as far as how things need to be going and looked at. And that's why we spend so much time, like I was just saying earlier, is having conversations with the clients. How you feeling? How you sleeping? All those kind of things, because all that stuff can be translated to information the doctor can look at and go, hey, you know what? Let's check this, or let's drop this, or let's increase this, or you know what? Let's go get some additional blood work done, because not everybody's the same. So it's very important. That's why the biggest reason we never got into pellets either is because I think that it's hard to really understand how people are going to metabolize the medication. So typical person, if you were 33-year-old Carl and Nora, and I have low testosterone symptoms. Great, Carl. We send you out. You get blood work done. Comes back. Let's say you're in the 400s, right? We look at SHBG and we look at estrogen and things like that. And depending where some of those things were, we might do something as minimal as 500 IUs of HCG twice a week with clomiphene 3 times a week, for example, right? And run that for 30 days. Check your blood work. Have we made, are we responding? How you feeling? Are you tired? Do you feel good? Libido's up, libido's down. But there's different things that are you emotional stuff, which I know you and I have talked about before, that can be related to estrogen and things like that too. And so then we get to that 30-day mark and we see if that worked. Did it take them, like we have guys that go through it sometimes, and it's a 30-day process, and every 6 months they may just do that with us just to like freshen them up, right? There's other times too where they just may go on a consistent 6 weeks HCG, 6 weeks off, and things like that. So it really varies on the individual, because like I said before, not everybody, some people take clomiphene and it's the greatest thing in the world. Some people take it and they feel like crap. So guess what? We're not going to keep having you take it, right?
I noticed I've used clomiphene as post-cycle therapy when using androgens in a more competitive environment. And I can tell you that it makes you moody and sad. It makes you like, you literally feel like you could cry at the drop of a hat, especially at the beginning. My protocol used to be 150 milligrams of clomiphene every day.
That's a ton.
For the first 4 days. Mm. And then you would cut it back to 100 for 4 days. And then you would cut it back to 50 for like maybe a week or two. And then you could cut it back to even 25, generally for a month or two. Mm-hmm. And that's with or without HCG. And I can tell you, when I first started using clomiphene in those high doses, it made me very melancholy, made me very, very sad and moody. It did.
I think in higher doses, beyond a reasonable doubt, it will do that. It'll make you tired. It can even like make your eyes kind of a little blurry.
Blurry. Yeah. My vision used to get bad. Yeah.
We would never have someone do over 50 milligrams a day. In that like ramp up kind, there's that ramp up or like that, you see things in the post-psychotherapy, 2000 IUs HCG every other day. Like that's nuts.
And in fact, isn't it true that more than like 1,500 or 2,000 units of HCG a week could actually cause the Leydig cells in the testes to stop functioning normally?
Oh yeah, you can the term we would use, like a layman's term, is like you can fry your LH and FSH levels.
Well, and you know why that? So think about this, why it makes sense too. When men get prostate cancer, they put them on a protocol called ADT, androgen deprivation therapy. And the way ADT works is you turn up the production of testosterone so high, you turn up the production of luteinizing hormone so high that the body literally runs out. Mm-hmm. And then you crash. And then you keep the guy in that zone by keeping your foot on the gas pedal. And the guy ends up with the testosterone levels of a 14-year-old girl. Right. So if you're good, so the same can be true by excessive doses of HCG. You're stepping on the gas pedal so hard. And in the initial stages, your testes will produce, but then at some point in time, they become exhausted and depleted, and you can't produce anything. And I know for a fact, I read a study 20 years ago, and I forget if it was 1,500 or 2,000 units of HCG a week ongoing caused the same effects as ADT, as androgen deprivation therapy.
Yeah, there's two things with that too. Is I think that in not everybody, there's folks I've worked with that they'll do 2,000 once a week, all at once, and it gets their LH and FSH levels perfect. But there's other people who can do it, and it will just sizzle them out, and now you have a 6-month plus road ahead of you to get them to wake back up. Right? Yes. Not worth the risk. Yes. The second thing is your body, not everybody, but some folks, your body can actually develop androgens against the HCG to where it no longer works for you either. And so measuring that and keeping, those smaller doses and taking breaks from HCG too is also wise. Like I said earlier with the testosterone, taking breaks as well, as it just makes sense to give yourself a break on that stuff. The other thing, so that would be something for somebody who's, we're checking to see if we can get their levels up. The two things that are most important in that situation are how do you feel, right? Like if we're stimulating natural testosterone production and maybe you go from 350 to 550, but you don't feel any different, you don't feel any better, we might be spinning our wheels, right? So, but at least we explored the first option. The second thing too is making sure your blood work's good, right?
I just want to bring something into that discussion. The older you are, the less effective the reboot is, right?
Right. For LH and FSH.
Yeah.
But not for SHBG. And that's the important thing too, is that the reboot can help with the SHBG levels. If you're running testosterone, no break, 2+ years, I would guarantee that your SHBG is low if you're not doing something like an HCG periodically. Every single time we see that. And so it's just something to be aware of. But the other part of that too is making sure blood work's good, because there's times where you can do, we have had guys that were with another clinic, and the clinic wasn't comfortable, or the doctor wasn't comfortable with doing testosterone. So they said, hey man, you're young or whatever, you're 36, here's HCG and Clomid or just HCG. And the guy's doing that. His testosterone's at 450 and his LH is at 10.2 and his FSH is like 9.7, right? Well, they're cranked, they're maxed out, they're in the high range,
right?
Still not converting, right? And sometimes there's an SHBG issue there. But typically speaking, they need more testosterone. And usually what we see is, that there's that range of testosterone, right? That normal range of, call it 250 to 1,000, we'll say. Right. But you have to understand, if in your 20s you were at 1,500, right? Then 700 is not going to feel good, right? Right. And if your testosterone levels have to be higher, but your blood pressure is good and your cholesterol came down, and all these other things are you're actually healthier with higher testosterone and obviously feel a lot better, then that's really where you should be, in our opinion, right? Like based on our philosophy is you need to feel really good and you need to be healthy and safe, right? And when I say feel good, I don't mean you're maxing out PRs at the gym. We don't care about that. And we don't care about, chasing every woman that walks by. Like, we don't care about those kind of things. That's a little on the aggressive side. And so that's something to think about, I think, when going into what makes you, where do I feel good at? Like, where do I want to feel great at?
Do you ever run into patients, and actually I'm going to ask this question, we're going to answer it on the other side of the break. Do you ever run into patients where you just, for some reason, the reboot just isn't working, and you have to start to look at their lifestyle? Because, I'm a firm believer in, and let's just assume somebody's ultra low testosterone levels is a kind of disease state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dis-ease. There's something wrong going on in their body, and testosterone levels are plummeting, and sometimes don't you have to also remove the insult that's causing the problem, even to get the therapy to work in the first place? I want you to think about that, and we're going to take, if I can find the right mouse here, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back with more of the Renew Life RX show. By the way, you can ask questions here on Facebook, and we will answer them. Stay tuned. Welcome back. So I posed the question on the other side of the break. Do you ever get people that you just can't medicate, supplement your way back to where you want to be with these people, and you start to look at their diet, their sleep habits, and anything else that could, there could be people who work in factories where they're being exposed to chemicals that we know are androgen mimicking or estrogen mimicking chemicals. Do you run into that at all?
Yeah, for sure. And that's one of the things with our onboarding process is we do kind of a lifestyle assessment, meaning we want to understand, what do you eat? How do you eat? Do you even pay attention to what you eat? Do you exercise? Do you not exercise? Are you an athlete? Like, do you overperform, right? And because understanding a lot about your lifestyle is going to let us know what, where you may be deficient as well. That, I always say that, if you're the guy that, sleep, couch potato, drinks 6 beers every night, doesn't exercise, overweight, not motivated. If you have like low testosterone, you don't even notice, right? But if you're exercising regularly, you're 100 miles an hour, you're 14-hour work days and things of that nature, then your lifestyle demand is high. And, at 35, it was manageable. At 40, it's getting tough. But at 45, you're running out of steam, right? And so we know that lifestyle is playing a part. But I think to your point, specifically, it's hard to understand if you said factory workers, or maybe they go in the hot tub every day, for an hour. I don't know. There's different things that can be part of that. But
so right now, people are thinking to themselves, hot tub. What does that have to do with? Well, if you're using a hot tub that uses chlorine as its antimicrobial, you are being exposed to a halogen, and halogens are all the same: iodine, bromide, chloride, and these compete at the thyroid. And so if you're in a lot of chlorine often, you're going to end up with chances are hypothyroid, a subclinical hypothyroid, and the thyroid directly affects. I just realized my audio is kind of low. The thyroid directly affects how other hormones in the body function, right? Your thyroid can affect you and actually cause low testosterone levels, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, you and I have talked about that before, that there's so many things from a society standpoint that can affect endocrine systems, right? I mean, there's literally things that they've taken off the market, whether it's pesticides or chemicals, ingredients, things that there's a lot of places in Europe that there's some of the stuff that's in our food that's not in their food. And I think some of the bottom line stuff affects that thyroid or overall endocrine system. And I think of, the different generations. I was just talking to a guy yesterday, he's 60 years old, great shape. Incredible. He's just lived a real good, healthy lifestyle. And the things he's been exposed to because of his age is different than my age and different than, these guys 10 years, 15, 20 years younger than me. Everything from the food that we eat, you know what I mean? Like if you're eating stuff that's boxed and bagged, and that's soy bag. I mean, I look at for my son, my son's a very competitive soccer athlete. He's only 10 years old, but I look at every wrapper of a, protein bar, something like that. I'm like, dude, too much soy, can't have it in, almonds, things like that, because I know that stuff can affect estrogen levels in men, and too much estrogen in men at young age, or boys, I should say, can hinder peaking at testosterone levels through puberty. And that's why there's so many more boys, I'll say, or young men that are going around. They're kind of puffy. They've got, almost like breast stuff coming in, and it's environmentally mostly food,
So getting back to the topic, your group does not just focus on testosterone. You guys focus on a variety of what can be considered parental as well as sex hormones. DHEA is replaced if necessary. Pregnenolone, is pregnenolone a big one for you? Is that an important thing for you?
No, we don't like it, because we stopped doing much with it years ago, because we found that the folks that did use it, if there wasn't a problem, they didn't really notice it in or out, right? And if there was a problem, it was usually like that lackadaisical, like, nah, just kind of, they're like overly relaxed, overly chill. And I think of, like, there was a lot of that, like, stay-at-home mom women that were doing it that just didn't feel like going after their day. Like, that's just, like, from what I remember. It's been a few years since we did that. But I think DHEA is a good indicator too, because another thing, going back to SHBG, because it really does tie back to the SHBG. But we'll see with higher SHBG, and their DHEA levels are smoked. I mean, they're just buried, and that's because that SHBG is sucking on that DHEA. There's not enough testosterone. You add the testosterone, you get adding the DHEA in also can help the taxing of the testosterone, also from cortisol levels, right? Those stress hormones that come in there, and in your body. There's an article I think we even talked about on a show about the older you get and your hormones drop, your DHEA, testosterone, things like that. The cortisol levels are still high because you're stressed. You're probably more stressed in your 40s than ever, right? You're maybe getting ready to put kids through college. You're at this, like, where am I going in my life as far as, like, how soon am I retired? Like, just, I think 40s, I'm not there yet, but I think it's probably going to be pretty stressful. I'm excited for it. And I think that what happens is your body is being taxed so much by those stress hormones, and you don't really have a lot of supply. But supplementing with things like DHEA and being on testosterone replacement therapy allow you to kind of have a fair fight in the battle, so that all the good hormones aren't being sucked in to combat this stress hormone. If you can kind of visualize that, that's another reason why we think, that our bigger philosophy of ours in the hormone replacement therapy is more about lifestyle than, like I said, we don't care about your PR. I don't care about your, like how big your arms are, but how you are able to navigate through life, from whether it's confidence, stress, depression. I mean, how many people have come back from depression? I think even something that you had a guy that he was referred from the show, who him and his wife had been trying to get pregnant for 4 years. We didn't even know that was something they were trying to do. 2 months into a program with us, they're pregnant, right? And I think something like that's cool. Like, you're changing somebody's life. It has nothing to do with the bench press. It has nothing to do with muscles, or it just had to do with the guy's hormones weren't right. And we put them right where we think they're right, not knowing what their goal was. And look at that, right? Everything worked out real well.
We actually have a viewer question from Jeff Higginbottom. He says, T shots or creams, why one over the other? Would you give HCG shots at the same time? And how would you dose either one? So this is a multiple answer questions. First of all, testosterone shots or creams, which do you prefer?
We always will prefer creams over injections for anybody across the board.
Why? Because compliance is easier?
No, I mean, safety, taboo. It's just easier for.
And then also you more closely mimic the daily production of testosterone, where it's up and down in a 24-hour cycle.
There is no up and down. Here's the deal. There's people that can do a testosterone injection today and Thursday, and their levels could peak tonight and they could have low testosterone in 2 days compared,
Right.
or they went from like 1200 to 500 in 48 hours. That's not healthy. Your body's going, what is going on, right? But you might be the guy that does the shot on today, and it just goes and it just streams perfect. We don't know, right? Without doing DNA testing and finding out how you metabolize certain drugs, like that's the only real way to find that stuff out. And we look at it as the cream, which I use and majority of our clients use. Is it's simple, it's topical. I think I had a video that I may have even sent you. That you rub it on your forearms, you rub your forearms together, and it's dry.
Let it dry. Yeah, let it dry and it's done.
It's like 30 seconds. I mean, it dries quick, and then you just go about your day. No highs, lows, no spikes, or anything like that.
Okay, so you actually answered question 1 and 2 in that first answer. That would you give HCG shots?
I'm going to go back
with you want to answer the other one? Why one over the other?
Well, the shots and the creams too. The other thing is, from a health standpoint, we have never, and I say never, seen anyone on, I'll say our cream protocol, what you're doing outside of what we recommend, have high hemoglobin or hematocrit levels ever. Injections, sometimes you could be, if you're sensitive to that, it'll spike up. If you're doing the split in the dose, like a Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday, whatever, with testosterone, half cc type thing, it's rare, almost never, that we see hematocrit or hemoglobin get high. But that's another thing, the health thing too. We see cholesterol levels better on cream than injections, right? And I think liver is rare that we ever see a spike, but if you have some sort of sensitivity in that area, your liver enzymes will be higher on injections than cream. And also the effect of LH and FSH levels and the effect of SHBG, where the cream almost doesn't affect. We have guys who we've had come on program with us, and their LH and FSH levels actually increased while on testosterone and doing small dose of HCG. It never happens on injection. It's just so much. It doesn't seem like a lot, right? But it's so much for the body at one time, and it works best for us. So going into, would you give HCG shots at that time? And yes and no, meaning that some of the clients, the doctor wants to have HCG because of other things in their blood work, or rotating it, maybe 90 days they don't do it, next 90 days for 6 weeks they'll do HCG, and then they don't do it again, right? So it all depends on where their LH and FSH are, how old they are, where their SHBG is. And just, like we talked about, there is zero cookie cutter, especially with how we do it, and there shouldn't be cookie cutter. There is some places to start, and there's some places to reference, because you have to do that in order to kind of checks and balances. But it all depends on the blood work. And the last question was, how would you dose either one? Again, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I just want to say one thing, that you're less likely to need HCG if you're on the cream, because you are having a 24-hour ebb and flow. So the testes are seeing more of a normalized demand for production, if you will.
And with the bioidentical too, what we kind of say is that it's almost like you're sneaking testosterone in, and your body doesn't really know it, right? And after a while, you get up, and now your blood levels are peaked, and you did it slow. Your body doesn't like surprises. It doesn't like temperature changes, right? It doesn't like, it likes you doing everything you do at the same time all the time. And when you make a massive change, like 100 milligrams of testosterone in your system like that, your body's going, what's going on? I mean, there's people that have anxiety attacks post-injection because their body's like, what's going on, right? It's like too much for them. And those are things that aren't talked about, because if you're thinking of like the bodybuilding society, where you have guys that are doing, I mean, in my bodybuilding years, we used to have jokingly, we'd say, like, don't waste any plastic in the syringe. I mean, like, we'd load it up, right? And it's, which is stupid, and I don't condone it. It put me up at a lot of potential health risks, but it doesn't seem like a lot to have those issues. And so for us, for our clients, Jim, Market Street guy, who's 54 years old, who's never done anything in his life, who's never even held the needle in his hand, this makes more sense. And there's less chance of, he doesn't want to YouTube and hope he does it right, or, like so we prefer that as well, as far as the cream over injection.
So as far as dosing goes, tell me if I'm wrong on this, but you're going to watch LH and FSH to know when you are in the sweet spot for that individual's testosterone levels, right? Because when you get testosterone levels up to a point where they're satisfactory for that individual, LH will drop dramatically because the pituitary is going, we're happy here. We don't need more luteinizing hormone. And FSH will also drop. And then if you go higher with the testosterone, you don't see any more drop. So you back down to that lowest effective dose. Isn't that how you kind of target? Isn't that the way it should be done, targeting in the appropriate dose for that individual?
So I think that there's two parts of it. The number one thing the first marker we're always going to check, how do you feel? Right? Because I don't care what your blood work says if you don't feel good, because you didn't come to me because you're like, I have this feeling my LH and FSH are, no one has ever done that, ever, not one time in the thousands of people we've worked with. But they come to us and they say, I don't feel good, man. I feel like crap. I don't have the energy. I'm not recovering from exercise. I don't have the libido. My wife's gorgeous. Like, that's what they come with us for. So we want to fix that and make sure they're healthy, right? And so usually with the cream dose, it's just a matter of how do they feel and where's their testosterone at. And also where's their SHBG at? If they're at a 50 SHBG and their testosterone's at 1200 and they feel like $1 million and everything else in their blood work's clean and great, then that's where we stay, whatever that dose might be. And your body, may through, different times, different seasons might need more testosterone or less testosterone. I mean, if immune system, training, or, if you take 2 weeks off the gym or you go to the gym twice a day for a month or two, maybe you have a different goal in mind. Now you're training harder. There's a higher tax and a higher demand on testosterone to where those things can change a little bit.
I want to take our last commercial break. When we come back, I want to give a little update on my recovery on my foot surgery, because as expected by anyone who knows me, I've overdone it again. And I had an appointment yesterday with the surgeon, and he wasn't really happy with me. I got to be honest with you. So let's do that. Let's take one last commercial break. We'll be right back with more the Renew RX live show. If you want to learn more about your own hormone replacement therapy approach, you can go to renewliferx.com. Let Adam know you heard about him here on Supreme Radio. You can actually save a bundle on your lab work. Stay tuned. We will be right back. First of all, Jeff Higginbotham wanted to say thank you for the answering his question. And then also a proud customer or client or patient, whatever you want to call them, of Renew Life RX wanted to check in with us, and that's Jason Lalou. Wanted you to know Jason. He was listening live. So, Adam, you told the great story on one of our shows about your neck surgery and how well you healed. Mm-hmm. And I too was healing very well. The doctor told me that I was ahead of schedule. Took me out of my cast, put me into a walking boot. But he told me when he put me in the walking boot, he said, "No, I still don't want you on your foot." He said, I still want you to use the crutches and use your little knee scooter. I'm thinking to myself, man, I'm using peptides. I got a pulsed electromagnetic field device that I'm putting under my foot for an hour a night. I know I've got mad bone knitting going on. And so for the past 2 weeks, I have not used the knee scooter or the crutches. And yesterday I went for my 2-week follow-up, and he looked at me and he said, are you putting weight on this foot? And I said, well, not really. I mean, a little more than before, because I'm in this walking boot now. He said, yeah, you can't put any weight on this foot, Carl. And then he showed me the x-ray. So what they did with my big toe was I used to have a joint, the big joint that's like your bunion joint in my big toe. They cut that joint out, and then they took what's known as bleeding bone, and they put 2 sheetrock screws through it and a big staple, and they fused it together. So I don't have a joint there any longer. And they put it at an anatomically correct angle. Dr. Steve Beato in Texas, who listens to my show, told me, this is what you need to do, Carl. And I actually gave what he wanted to have done to me to this surgeon. The surgeon said, this is exactly what I had planned to do to you. Well, what happened was, when they joined these two pieces of bone together, they're supposed to fuse together, and they were fusing together quite nicely, I say. Well, the x-ray yesterday showed that this front piece that goes to my toe is kind of moved up a little bit and to the side. And he looked at me, he said, you've got to be putting pressure on this foot. That wouldn't move unless you are. And I said, well, you know what? I haven't been as good as I should be. I didn't tell him the truth because I felt like a fool. If I would have told him for the past 2 weeks I've been walking on this boot, he probably would have said, you know, you got one shot of getting this right. And after this, we just cut the big toe off. You know, that's it. And so I am relegated back to the knee scooter and the crutches again. And in fact, I have one of these Aura rings that I use to like track, you know, everything. And so with the bad foot, I'm averaging about 8,000 steps a day, which is not good. So I am back to the boot today. I used my crutches to go to the gym, and he said, look, it's still good. If we can get this bone to fuse, you're fine. He goes, but if it doesn't fuse, he says, then we're gonna have to look at something else. And I don't know what something else means. But yeah, so this is all me. This is all my fault, you know.
It's, you know, I think that we're challenged a lot of times with like yeah, I know what I should be doing, but maybe I'm going to do something a little in that, you know, like I was always concerned after my neck surgery going back to the gym, and I'm like, I'm a strong guy, I'm fit, I could probably do a little bit of stuff, and I was actually surprised. 10 years ago I would have hurt my neck again, 100%. My ego and all that, I would have gotten in the gym. I gotta get those heavy weights.
Yeah, you would have been doing good mornings with the neck and with the bar
right.
in your neck. Yeah.
Next thing you know, in an ambulance. And so now it's even still, I'm 2 months out, and I'm still taking it easy. I'm going high volume, and you know, but those heavier weights, it almost kind of scares me a little bit for now. But
for now, yeah.
After my 12 week, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna actually try to maybe even put some size on and increase the. I don't eat that much, and you know, I exercise more than I train. You know, but it's what makes me feel good. So that's important.
No, absolutely. You know, my problem is I have such an active life. Mm-hmm. It's impossible for me to be on that knee scooter.
Well, how many times do you just get up and go to the bathroom, right? If you're
okay, exactly. And now I'm using the knee scooter to go back and forth to the bathroom. But it's more like, okay, when I get out of my car, I got my backpack, I got my meals, you know, that I take with me. I got my jug of water, and then I usually have some other items, right? And so I'm hanging stuff over my shoulder, I'm putting stuff over the handlebars, and like I was supposed to travel. I was supposed to go visit Aaron Singerman in the next week or two. And that's off now. He said, no, I don't want you traveling. He says, because you're going to be too prone to put your foot down. How are you going to carry how would I carry luggage? How do I bring my luggage? Do I bring scoot in with the luggage one at a time, leave them out at the curb? I mean, it's just, yeah. And I said to him, hey, Doc, I said, have you ever tried to live just one day on one leg? And he looked at me, he says, no, I'm sure it's hard. And it's not just hard, it's an impossibility. I have to lift the scooter up to bring it upstairs. How do I get the scooter up the stairs from the garage to the house? You bring a funny point, because maybe in medical school there should be more of like, hey, Billy, you're going in a cast for 8 weeks. What? You know, and it's one of my really good friends is a surgeon who actually referred me to my surgeon. And I was sharing, I was a little scared of the anesthesia and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, I've never had it, but I'm sure it'll be okay. And in my head, I'm like, that's your job. Like, you should at least go under. When I went to school, when I went to school for optometry, I already wore contact lenses, so it was no big thing for me. But one of the things that Bob Russo, who was the head of the clinical side of the school, required every student to put in, back then they were gas permeable. They weren't even soft lenses. Yeah. To learn how to put in and take off semi-permeable contact lenses so that they'd understand what the patient's dealing with And you'd see a bunch of guys and girls, we all look like idiots, like trying to get this thing in there. I was good because I was already wearing lenses. I was like, oh yeah, this is easy for me.
That's also where innovation comes from, is if you have the practitioner of anything, right? The practitioner doesn't experience it, then you have a patient, you have this gap. But when you actually have the developers are also the users, and that's where like you see strides in technology in different places. Like they figure out like, this isn't as awesome as we thought it was. Let's change it, fix it. Then you have things like iPhones and iTunes and all those kind of other things out there because the innovators are also using the stuff. But if you're a doc and you're, orthopedic surgeon or whatever, you've never been in a cast, then you might not know how like terribly annoying that might be and things like that too.
Do you know one other area that should be a must mandate? To be a judge, to be a judge in any court system. So if you're elected to be a judge, you should be required before you first sit on the bench to be stripped of your identity and sent to another state where they didn't just see your election and they know that you won, and spend a weekend in jail as just an average person. So that you understand, of course they'd be scared. You understand what it feels like to live in a threatening environment, be humiliated, be stripped of anything meaningful to you, so that you understand what that feels before you sit before a person and say, you're going to jail for a year, buddy.
Yeah.
Every judge should have to go to jail for a little while just to understand what they're delving out when they hand out those.
For me, what I think, there's a lot of, I believe in people and I believe in rehabilitation, and I believe that you can rebuild people, and jail is not the environment. That you have a bunch of people that they're the opposite, you know what I mean, when they come out of there. And I think that really seeing, especially young people, that's why, like I work with young people as a volunteer thing that I do, just because I know that, man, that's a very sensitive place and they can be swayed in so many different areas. And, some kid makes some stupid emotional mistake, like people get mad and you punch a kid or you hit a kid with something and they die. And then you spend the rest of your days in prison or something like that, when there could be some rehabilitation that person could go and speak and teach, and to where other people, before they raise their fist, they stop and go, there's some consequences outside of my emotional state for the next 10 minutes. I need to cool down, and that's something that I believe in. I'm passionate. And but to your point of those judges thinking of that stuff over, just like, get them out of here, I'm mad, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think that's good.
Anyway, do we have anything else we want to wrap up the discussion with that we may?
One last thing is I went yesterday for a ton of allergy tests. So I'm allergic to shrimp, but I know I have a little bit of a mold allergy. And I recently, I relocated from Detroit to Houston. Houston's a much more humid climate, new home. And one of the physicians who work with out of Florida, we was talking about my different stuff with my HLA-B27 and things like that. He said, dude, I want you to get some mold testing done and just go get the rest of the allergy tests just to see, because there's certain things like I want to eat crawfish. I don't know if will I die or can I eat crawfish? Like, so I've never been tested.
Or even taking glucosamine and chondroitin could be threatening for you.
I won't even take it.
Right.
I won't even take it because the shrimp. So I have a list here of all the stuff that they tested for. So I should have that back. And then I'm doing the skin test Monday. And so I'll have all that back. And I was, curious in the next show or whatever, we could dig into the
allergy stuff.
And also on my blood work that we have, it's not back yet, to talk about too, is I did iron testing, copper, lead, and what else do we have on here? Mercury. I eat a ton of sushi. And so I want to see too, that could be something I think the listeners might be interested in, is to hear about some other stuff, because allergies, I mean, if you've got some plagued allergies that you don't realize, it could be really harming your just overall mood and energy and all that kind of stuff.
I remember reading a study probably about 15 years ago that said that the mercury in fish is not a threat for humans. And the reason for that is there's only two types of fish that have less selenium than mercury. And selenium bonds to mercury, and actually through the methylation process, the body can excrete it. There's three fish. There's hammerhead shark, tilefish, and whale. Whale do not have adequate amounts of selenium, and this is why a lot of the Inuits suffer with the issues with mercury. Yeah, but they don't have a lot. It's not a lot.
Yeah,
but again, but yeah,
I'm just
salmon has a lot of selenium in it. So the selenium binds to the mercury and it carries it out of your body. But yeah, when you get ready to do the allergy show, look for that research so that you can either correct me or say, because it's going to be interesting to see with your admission that I eat a lot of sushi, that your mercury load is going to be zip, and you're going to be like, how could that be?
And I actually ate sushi the night before I didn't think about it. And then I went in and I was like, damn. And so if I have to, I'm also going to do a follow-up where I do like a 7 to 10 day sushi fast and see what that does to it.
Yeah. Going to be very cool.
Yeah.
Hey, Adam, thanks for everything today, brother. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. Okay.
Take care. Thanks, Carl.
Take care. And then if I can find the right controller here, there we go. I just wanted to say, listen, we have a new Facebook page, and I'm sorry, a new YouTube page. If you go to the Superhuman Radio Network Facebook page, you'll see a link, and I need people to subscribe to the YouTube channel, where we will be putting a lot of these videos up there. These videos will not have commercials in them on YouTube. And I need at least 100 people to subscribe to the new YouTube channel so that we can get a unique URL like YouTube/Superhuman Radio Network. And that's what I'm shooting for. So check out my Facebook page, check out the Superhuman Radio Network Facebook page, and subscribe to the new YouTube channel. And we will see everybody. Tomorrow's Friday. I'm off. We have a great show Monday. We have a woman coming on Monday that's 75 years old. And when you see how strong she is, how fit she is, what she looks like, you're going to realize that there is no excuse for anybody at all. If you want to live a long, healthy, strong life, you can. You just have to start doing the work. We'll see you on Monday.